Welcome to Concept Craft. We are presenting step-by-step videos training to crack your certification exam, so you can gain the confidence to take on any accounting challenge. Now let's begin our today's lesson. Working with budgets. Learning outcomes. In this lesson, we'll cover creating budgets in QuickBooks Online. Topics: overview of budgets in QuickBooks Online, creating a budget, running and customizing budget reports, using budgets to measure estimates against costs, the need for cash. Many small businesses experience cash flow issues. Without enough cash coming in to keep up with the expenses, they might have trouble paying salaries or bills, and they can't invest in the growth of their business. How can you and QuickBooks Online help? With QuickBooks Online Plus and Advanced, clients can easily create a budget that supports business planning. This allows them to plan ahead and ensure sufficient cash to cover expenses, whether their goal is to maintain cash flow or expand and grow over time. Overview of budgets in QuickBooks Online. Here are some key facts about creating budgets in QuickBooks Online Plus and Advanced. Budgets can only exist for profit and loss accounts. There's no budget for balance sheet accounts. Budgets can be created, copied, edited, and deleted. A budget can only be for 1 year at a time, but it is possible to create and manage multiple budgets. Budgets are based on the fiscal year setup in account and settings. They can't be based on calendar years unless the fiscal year starts with the calendar year. The budget must start with the first month of the fiscal year, so the fiscal year setting must be correct in account and settings. What do you need to consider before creating a budget? If the budget is to be based on the current year's actual data, you should first run a year-to-date profit and loss detail report to make sure all of the period's transactions have been assigned correctly. If transactions haven't been assigned correctly, the miscategorizations will make the new budget inaccurate. Alternatively, you can base your budget on the previous fiscal year's actual data. In that case, customize the profit and loss detail report to show those amounts. Do this by selecting last fiscal year or last year, if the fiscal year end is December 31st, under report period when you run the report. Creating a budget. Let's see how to create a budget in QuickBooks Online. Note that creating a new budget won't overwrite or affect existing budget reports. Select the gear icon and then Budgeting. Next, select Add Budget. Enter a name for the budget. From the fiscal year drop-down, select the year. From the interval drop-down, choose monthly, quarterly, or yearly budget. In our case, we choose monthly. Next, from the pre-filled data drop-down, select the preferred option. In our case, we select No. Then select an option from the Subdivide by drop-down. In our case, there is only an option for customer, which will include customers and sub-customers as well as projects, if the projects feature is turned on and a project is set up. If we had location or class tracking enabled and actively used, we could also opt to split the budget by class or location. Select Next. Now you can enter the figures for the budget one line at a time. To copy an entry across the whole row, select the blue arrow. Select the grid gear icon to change the view by from monthly to quarterly or annually. QuickBooks Online will display the recalculated budget according to the period. Here you can also select whether to hide blank rows or not. Finally, select Save. That's it. Running and customizing budget reports. You can run two different types of report based on an existing budget. The Budget Overview Report shows a summary of budgeted amounts for a specific budget. The Budget versus Actuals report shows a summary of budgeted amounts versus actual amounts and their variances and variance percentages. How do you run a budget report? To run either type of report, open the Report Center and search for reports with the word budget in them. You'll find both budget reports in the search results. You can also run a budget report by going to the budget screen and finding the budget you want. Use the drop-down in the action column to select which report you want to see. When you select Run Budget versus Actuals report, the whole range of customization options appears in the header section. The Customize button allows you to further refine the report by choosing which grid to show and then filtering by the available choices. Note that there is a budget drop-down in the header section. From here, you can switch to a different budget if more than one has been created. When you run a budget versus actuals report for a budget that was subdivided, in this case for a customer, you expect to see actual figures just for that customer. In fact, you see columns for every customer, so you need to filter the budget for that particular customer. In the Customize Report area, select the appropriate Show Grid option, Accounts versus Months, Accounts versus Quarters, or Accounts versus Total. Pro Advisor Tip. Although we focused on the Budget versus Actuals report here, you can customize the Budget Overview report in a similar way, using budgets to measure estimates against costs. Your clients may find it useful to compare customer estimates against actual job costs. For example, a gardener may want to see how actual job costs compare to pre-project estimates to decide whether to change the prices in future estimates. There are differences between using estimates and using budgets, which you should bear in mind. Estimates use items, whereas budgets use accounts. You can enter projected costs in a budget, but not in an estimate. What does this mean in practice? Because a client can't enter projected costs on an estimate form, if they want to track projected costs versus actual costs, they have to use a budget instead of an estimate. If the client then wants to send these projected costs to their customer, they can create a budget overview report, and even rename it with a title such as Estimate Overview. Select the questions below to find out more about how to use the budget overview and budget versus actuals reports to compare customer estimates against actual job costs. How do you run a budget versus actuals report for a particular customer, location, or job? Because QuickBooks Online allows you to create multiple budgets, you can create a budget for each job. To do this, create each budget from scratch, subdivided for a particular customer. Specify the customer job and enter the estimated income and cost details for the job. To use budgets to measure customer estimates against job costs, follow these steps. Run a budget versus actuals report and rename it as an estimate versus actuals report. Customize the report to filter for the specific customer job. Because the budget for each customer, location, or job is already set, it's common to forget to filter the report. Save this report to monitor the progress of the work regularly. Remember that a budget can only be created for a fiscal year. You have to create multiple budgets for jobs that span more than one fiscal year. Can you specify the accounting method on the budget versus actuals report? Yes. Budget figures are the same for both cash and accrual accounting methods. So if you want to compare actuals, including costs and expenses, to the budget for a project and see the cash flow impact, change the accounting method to cash. What if a project spans more than one fiscal year? If the project takes 12 months or less but those 12 months span 2 fiscal years, you or your client can use this workaround. In Account and Settings, temporarily change the first month of the fiscal year to match that of the project. Then create the budget, subdivided for that project. Change the first month of the fiscal year back to the original date. The budget overview and budget versus actuals reports for this project-based budget will still pick up the 12-month year for this project even though it doesn't match the company's fiscal year. If a particular project takes longer than 12 months, you'll need to create separate budgets for each 12-month period. You may also need to change the first month of the fiscal year of the company to match the fiscal year of the project, and then create multiple budgets for each year. Then change the company's first month of the fiscal year back to its original date. Summing up. Learning outcomes. Well done. In this lesson, we covered creating budgets in QuickBooks Online. Knowledge recap. You can now support your clients in setting up budgets to help them maintain their cash flow on current activities and plan for the future. Remember, you can only set up budgets for profit and loss accounts, and you can only create budgets for 1 year at a time. Budgets are based on the fiscal year set up in Account and Settings, not the calendar year. Next steps. In the next lesson, we'll cover enabling inventory tracking in QuickBooks Online.